Unfortunately, yesterday, no mock draft Monday, but as I promised, if you follow me on Twitter at Bengal YouTube, it's 2-round Tuesday. Not sure this is going to be a mainstay on the channel, as I'm sure it's going to take quite a bit of time, but we're going through 2 rounds today. So if you're a fan of the Panthers or Browns or anybody else without a first round pick, depending on how things shape out, having trades in this one, but you will see your team pick for maybe the first time on this channel. And let's go ahead and get into things. There are so many good players in this class, and I do want to say, as you work down the board, right, at this point here before the Combine in February, which is next week, I'll have a Combine video coming out at some point in the near future, and maybe even going over another mock draft tomorrow. However, basically anybody that you see go in the second round here could end up sneaking into the back end of the first. It's a real possibility, and there were so many good players. It's tough to even get players I want to fit into the second round. So with that being said, let's go ahead and pop in. The draft will remain the same at the start for me, as this is just how I believe things will go. Got Caleb Williams being the #1 overall pick. I just think the Bears are going to stick and pick and take the quarterback. As I've mentioned, it just makes too much sense to reset the quarterback clock and go with someone with such a high ceiling the way Caleb Williams does. You know, there's so much stupidity surrounding Caleb Williams right now. You got a former scout saying he's got a 4th round grade, fragile, whatever. So many of these reports about Caleb Williams have never been corroborated. Just, oh, Caleb Williams wants a piece of the franchise or he'll go back to school. Caleb Williams this, Caleb Williams that. Find me a legitimate source confirming any of that, and then we can talk. But Caleb Williams is a tremendous playmaker on the field. I do think he ends up being the #1 overall pick in the draft for that reason. And at the same point right now, people have prospect fatigue about Drake May. Make no mistake, Drake May would be the #1 overall pick in most draft classes. Caleb Williams happens to be in this one. Drake May is probably quarterback 1B. That pushes him to the #2 overall pick. He is a fantastic prospect with a big-time arm and accuracy down the field. Now, you look at completion percentage, and maybe you're a little bit down on Drake May. It's a stupid metric to look at. It's just plain stupid. Maybe adjusted when you factor in drops and throwaways. I can get on board with that more so than just flat-out completion percentage. His offensive line was atrocious. He lost his receiving weapons from the year prior. No more Josh Downs, for example. But plain and simple, Drake May is a fantastic prospect. He is worthy of the #2 overall pick to a QB-needy team. I know they already have a UNC quarterback on roster. How about a better one? And then at #3, I really do think we see 3 quarterbacks to start this draft. I think Jaden Daniels will be the 3rd overall pick. Is there a chance he goes earlier or later? Yeah, absolutely. Could I see the Patriots trading out of this pick? I suppose there's a chance. But I think the most likely scenario right now is that the Patriots stick and pick and take their QB of the future. At #4, it's going to continue to be Marvin Harrison Jr. for me. I have no reason to change it. He's a really good player, as I've said the entire process. The one thing that stands out the most when you watch Marvin Harrison Jr., he makes the ridiculous plays look easy. Everything is just easy for Marvin Harrison Jr., or at least it looks that way. Cardinals could really use help at receiver. Really don't have anybody locked in long-term except for Michael Wilson that I would actually believe in, really. So with the short contracts or players not even on contract, like Hollywood Brown, you need to go out and get a receiver, probably even with Hollywood Brown being retained. Rondale Moore in there as well, right? But not any significant security there long-term. And, even if there is, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. Let's be real. At #5, I've got a trade already. I know how this is going to go down. I've got the Vikings moving up, multiple first-round picks to go out and get #5. Now, I think Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has been aggressive as a trader so far. Sometimes that's meant trading down the board. Sometimes it means going out and getting a guy like TJ Hawkinson from a division rival. And I think the Vikings will continue to be aggressive, but this time moving up for a quarterback. If they're unable to retain Kirk Cousins or just want to go in a different direction, with QBs flying off the board, and if you have a significantly higher grade on JJ McCarthy compared to any of the other quarterbacks in this draft, which seems like a distinct probability based on what we're hearing right now, I think JJ McCarthy ends up going pretty high in this draft. And 5 does seem early. I totally understand oh, if JJ McCarthy is drafted by my team, I'll stop being a fan. If this is the biggest bust of all time. So JJ McCarthy has some things that you don't probably love. His size, his lack of real reps as a passer, but there are a ton of things that you love when you watch JJ McCarthy play. He does have really good straight line speed, as I've mentioned in the past, but he has a really talented arm as well. He makes a couple of splash plays a game, and that's really all Michigan asked of him. When he needed to make big plays on third down, he was able to do it. I know they ran the ball basically every play, but when you factor in what NFL teams might like, is that he's a winner. I know I don't value the QB wins as a stat thing, but apparently NFL teams really do. If the Vikings happen to be one of those franchises, McCarthy could be a player that's very high on their board. And this is a guy with a big, big ceiling. A ton of potential for McCarthy. He could end up developing into being one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Maybe not top 5, but around that top 10 range. And I know there's a world where he ends up not working out. As you can say about any player in this draft, and especially quarterbacks, it's the most volatile position by far. But if it works out, you're going to be pretty excited about this. He can make some big-time splash plays, and he just wasn't asked to do a ton at Michigan. But I think he's able to go through his progressions. His ability to be accurate, I think, is underrated, and he can check down, which I know doesn't sound like a ton, but that shows that a quarterback's not trying to force the ball in, is comfortable taking what's there. McCarthy was able to do that. I'm not saying this is a player I would take in the top 5, but it seems like an NFL team is going to, and who knows? With teams trying to trade up, if the Vikings want their chance to go and get a quarterback, they might have to move up, because you might have the Broncos, maybe even the Raiders, Saints, Falcons, all looking for that third or fourth quarterback, I should say. And if you don't have a high grade on Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr., a lot of injury concerns with Penix, McCarthy does end up getting pushed up the board. I know it's going to seem early. I agree. It's just what I think is a possibility come draft time. We'll have to see how the rest of the process shakes out. It's only February 20th as I record this. Giants at number 6. Going to go Malik Neighbors. I think he's one of the best players in the entire draft. The Giants really need help at receiver, and a dynamic downfield threat that's as good as anybody with the football in his hands in this draft, maybe with the exception of Malachi Corley, but Neighbors is right there, if not even better. You take him at number 6, and you don't think twice. I know some have Rome Odunze higher. I think Neighbors I probably give the edge to right now. At number 7, got the Titans going Joe Alt. I think it's just going to be an offensive lineman. I know people, or some have said, oh man, why do you keep giving the Titans an offensive lineman, blah, blah, blah. And maybe you would consider Rome Odunze if he's on the board. Obviously, they're changing offensive philosophy now with a new head coach coming in. And this is the same team going from the Bengals to the Titans that took Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell in that class. So maybe you would go with Rome Odunze over Joe Alt. But the offensive line, on the edge at least, is very bad. Left and right tackle, horrendous. I do actually like the interior. Brewer and Brunskill, I think, is actually a pretty decent interior combo. Tackle needs to be upgraded in the worst way, and you can get maybe the best in the draft. It's a loaded tackle class. If you have your pick of Joe Alt, Olu Fashanu, or Talisa Fuaga, you feel pretty good about that, and the Titans cash in at 7. At number 8, got the Atlanta Falcons going with Rome Odunze, receiver out of Washington. I know it seems crazy to say they need more weapons. Maybe they need to utilize them more. But you got Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. Add another threat on the outside, and maybe you could actually finally use some of those guys in your offense. Receiver certainly a position of need. I could see this being a Dallas Turner, maybe even the first corner off the board. But it's offense all the time here in this particular draft class, as we have all offensive players in the first 8 picks. At number 9, got the Chicago Bears going with first defensive player off the board, Dallas Turner. I still think he's going to be the first defensive player drafted. Could be Terrion Arnold. Could be somebody else. But I think it's going to be Dallas Turner. I've said that the entire process. That's one thing that I continue to agree with as things have changed through February. But Dallas Turner, I still think, ends up being the first defensive player off the board. Not a given. Not saying I'd put my life savings on it, but I think there's a distinct possibility that ends up happening. At number 10, The Jets really need help on the offensive line. Well, got a lot of good ones available. Olu Fashanu, Talisa Fuaga. The Jets have been linked early to Talisa Fuaga. I'm going to follow that and just give the Jets Talisa Fuaga. They need a tackle. He can play right tackle immediately. At number 11, the Chargers, after a trade down, are still able to secure Brock Bowers. I think you consider that a win. You get a first-round pick next year, and maybe the player you would have considered taking at number 5 anyway. So I think things have worked out pretty well for the Chargers in this scenario. At number 12, got the Denver Broncos going Terrion Arnold out of Alabama. Maybe the best corner in this draft. I think it depends what you want. Arnold is feisty. He can come up and tackle. When I was going back and watching him, especially in that Texas game, that was the one thing that stood out to me a lot. This guy's able to be shifty, evade blocks, and still, bring a ton of force when bringing down the ball carrier. He's someone that is also pretty good in coverage. I think he's just the complete package at corner. And Nate Wiggins might have a higher ceiling in coverage. He's got better size, longer arms, probably better speed as well. So it depends what you want. Honestly, it really does. And Arnold, I think, could move into the slot if you wanted to, but I think he sticks on the outside. Wiggins is just purely an outside guy that can't really tackle as well. But Arnold, I think, does end up being the first corner off the board right now. Although it would not shock me to see it be Nate Wiggins, maybe even Cooper DeJean or Quinyon Mitchell as well. The top few corners are all very, very close. It just kind of depends what you want for me. DeJean is the kind of do-it-all type guy. Play him in the nickel. He tackles so well. But maybe you could even move him to safety, play over the top. But he's a certainly good enough athlete to stick at corner. Certainly is. Arnold might be the best of both worlds. Wiggins has the typical height, length, speed combo that you love at corner. And Mitchell has big-time speed, decent enough size as well, and may end up being the best cover player in this class. It's a very interesting cornerback group. At number 13, though, I've got the Raiders going with Olu Fashanu from Penn State. Their offensive line needs help. I think Olu, you're going to plug and play at right tackle. A lot of experience starting on that left side. Of course, don't really need a left tackle. You have Colton Miller. But on the right side, I think you've got an immediate starter. I know quarterback is a need. We're going to figure that out at some point, and that will happen in this mock draft as well. At number 14, I have the Saints sticking and picking and going with offensive tackle J.C. Latham out of Alabama. This has been one of my favorite moves to make the entire draft process. I think he's a plug-and-play starting right tackle with actual experience starting at right tackle. Saints have a lot of problems at left and right tackle. Ramczyk for the future is not really a guy I think you're going to be able to count on. Big injury stuff, and it just keeps adding up. Maybe you get another year or two out of him, but Latham, I think, gives you an answer, not only right now, but for the future as well. Of course, remember, if you're a team with a player under contract for 1, maybe even 2 more years, it's not too early to get their replacement. When you, especially in the first round, you can get the 4 years guaranteed for a rookie deal, plus the 5th-year option. That gives you, if they're under contract for 2 years, that gives you 3 extra years with their replacement, even after that first contract expires from the player that you are trying to replace, if that makes sense. It certainly makes sense to plan for the future. That's what we're doing here with the Saints at number 14. And especially if Ramczyk doesn't even end up coming back strong in 2024, he's a starter right away for J.C. Latham. At number 15 for the Indianapolis Colts, I'm going with cornerback Nate Wiggins from Clemson. I think he's right up there as a potential top corner in this draft. Again, a lot of guys very, very close. Wiggins, as I kind of talked about earlier, has that great combination of height, length, long arms, and big-time speed. Really like Nate Wiggins as a process, or in this process. Really like him as a player. And the Colts need help at corner pretty desperately. I think they could go back and get a safety later in this draft, maybe somewhere in the 2nd or 3rd round. But Nate Wiggins here, I think, is a pretty great pickup at number 15. Colts have a lot of options if you're not able to bring back Michael Pittman Jr., but I expect him to get franchise tagged if you can't come to an extension. Receiver could be in play. A guy like Brian Thomas Jr. makes a ton of sense for me here, but I like Nate Wiggins at 15 for sure. At number 16, I have the Seattle Seahawks going with Byron Murphy out of Texas. I love Byron Murphy, of course, big guy, hook 'em horns. I think I'm actually wearing Texas hoodie today. Not unusual for me. But Murphy, incredible player, undersized in terms of height and length with the shorter arms, but plays the leverage game at an unbelievable level. He can really get low, and football, especially in the trenches, is a leverage game. Low man wins. Nobody does it better than Byron Murphy. He's also a really good pass rusher on the interior. That's why he ends up being the first interior defensive lineman off the board to a team that could use some more juice. And I think if you look at the Ravens, Mike McDonald coming in, Justin Madubuike had an awesome breakout. I think Byron Murphy could be in that same mold and end up being an incredible player on the interior defensive line for Seattle. Really love that pick for them. Could be interior offensive line as well. I've been Troy Fautanu for them a lot. We're going to mix it up today. At number 17, pretty much always go offensive line here for the Jags. Going Quinyon Mitchell today. You know, saw Trent Baalke at the Senior Bowl, following along the offensive lineman. But, you know, who was also at the Senior Bowl was Quinyon Mitchell. Had an incredible performance. And, of course, the tape at Toledo was really, really good. He's able to downhill trigger, show off that explosiveness, make tackles, but he's especially sticky in man coverage. And, yes, that is at Toledo. I don't especially care when he is as fast as he is, and he's going to be 4.3 speed or close to it at the Combine. And especially from what we saw at the Senior Bowl, if you see a corner that can actually cover in one-on-ones, you got a special type of a player. It's so rigged against them, so to speak. It's so much easier for a receiver, especially some of these smaller slot guys, to instantly win these one-on-ones. A corner that can actually cover in those drills is incredibly impressive, and Quinyon Mitchell was very, very impressive down in Mobile at the Senior Bowl. He ends up being a top 20 pick to a team that needs an upgrade at corner. Darius Williams is not a long-term guy. Love Tyson Campbell. Now we have an outside partner for him. At number 18, sticking with the Bengals theme of going offensive line here, I'm going with Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma. Big time starting right tackle. Really good athlete. Not super refined at this point, but will end up being probably a top 20 or 25 pick in this draft. A team that really needs a right tackle is the Cincinnati Bengals. They keep taking swings, haven't hit on their guy just yet. Maybe Tyler Guyton could be the exception. At number 19, got the LA Rams. Thought about quarterback here a little bit. Thought about offensive tackle, but with Guyton off the board, maybe you don't want to take Amarius Mims here. And Jared Verse falling a little bit, and that's who you end up taking. Now, I really like what the Rams are doing. I think they've had some really good drafts, despite not having many picks. Of course, you got Kobe Turner on the interior. You have, one of the most explosive edge rushers you're ever going to find, who was also in that Rookie of the Year conversation. Of course, Byron Young from Tennessee, not to be confused with Byron Young from Alabama. Jared Verse is somebody that can actually be on the other side, get you some pass rush. When you look at Byron Young, he's really a speed guy at this point. Verse can offer a little bit of speed, but certainly a ton of power. I think it's kind of a fun yin-yang type of mash, mash up there. And the Rams, they could really explore a ton of different options in this draft. I look at tackle, I look at quarterback, I look at corner. We end up settling for Jared Verse at 19. Pretty good value. At number 20, I know I've done this quite a few times. I just think it's such a great fit. Amarius Mims from Georgia. Of course, you drafted his teammate last year in Broderick Jones. Going back to the Georgia tackle well here. And Mims has upside as a starting right tackle. He has tremendous size with really, really unbelievably quick feet for his size. I think he ends up being a first-round pick. And the Steelers here, it just makes too much sense. It really does. You could also certainly consider Jackson Powers Johnson at this point. I think it just ends up being an offensive lineman. It's just, do you want an interior player or a tackle? And I think the first round, you probably lean towards a tackle. Jackson Powers Johnson ends up going with the very next pick to the Miami Dolphins. They could certainly use a center. No telling whether you're going to bring back Texas legend Connor Williams, right? But Jackson Powers Johnson has starting upside right away. Could potentially play guard as well if he wanted to do that. Still a little newer to center, but was as good as any center in the country last year. Ends up being a first-round pick for good reason, and also dominated in his short time at the Senior Bowl. Pretty good fit there for Miami. At number 22, got the Philadelphia Eagles going with Troy Fautanu from Washington. Could potentially stick at tackle or play guard. You have Cam Jurgens. That's going to be your center replacing Jason Kelce at some point. So you're drafting here either for a tackle or a guard. We know the Eagles are very likely to take a premier position, and that's tackle, that's defensive end. Could still be a corner, but Offensive line continues to be a very common thought for me here with Philadelphia. Could also see this being a receiver if they like Brian Thomas Jr. enough. And I keep trying to find a way to push him up the board, and I just continue to not be able to find it. However, I'm going to stick him here to the Texans at 23. He's a really great player. Big time size and speed down the field with good hands as well. Scored more touchdowns than anybody last year. And for the Texans, I like their receiving core. When Tank Dell comes back from injury, that's your slot guy. John Mechie rotates in as well. Nico Collins is looking to be a bona fide wide receiver 1 at this point. Brian Thomas Jr. would be a nightmare matchup for corners because you just won't be able to match up with the size and the speed. It's a dangerous combo. And if you're building around CJ Stroud, get him more weapons. They've got a bunch of good players. Noah Brown's good, right? Fine player. No one would disagree, right? But Brian Thomas Jr. has a chance to be certainly above that. Get him with Nico Collins. Again, Tank Dell, John Mechie as your rotational slot guys. Tank Dell probably is your 3 once he comes back from injury. Mechie until then, maybe. I know Robert Woods has been in there as well. But Brian Thomas Jr. is a mold very different from any of those guys. 6'4", 205, big speed down the field. It's a really fun pick for the Texans, in my opinion. Cowboys at 24. It's tough to figure out what the Cowboys are going to do because this could be a tackle, could be a center, maybe even it's a guard. I don't know what the plan is for sure going to be with Tyler Smith, who was excellent at left guard last year. Now, if you look at defense, they could use help on the edge. Not the most immediate thing. And their defensive interior could certainly be upgraded. I know you take Mozzie Smith last year. Maybe you don't take one at 24. I think it's in play. But for me, with the Texans or with the Cowboys at 24 following the Texans, I'm going with a tackle, and I'm going with one that has big time upside, that is a pure tackle. And you look at these guys, Barton is probably going to move to center. Jordan Morgan could probably move to guard. Kieran Amagaji is raw, not a first-round guy. Same thing with Blake Fisher, really. Patrick Paul is not a first-round player. So, who is it? Well, it's the one name that I omitted, of course. I'm going Kingsley Suamataia from BYU. The Cowboys have shown a great ability to develop offensive linemen, and Kingsley Suamataia has first-round traits, similarly to the way that Amarius Mims does. This is a first-round type of player. I don't know that he gets into the first round for sure, but he's got great size and athleticism. 6'6", 315. That can be a starting tackle for the Cowboys. Now, Tyler Smith was raw. They developed him to being a dominant left guard. Kingsley Suamataia, a little bit raw as well, kind of in a similar mold, but has starting tackle upside sooner rather than later. And the Cowboys, who continue to develop offensive linemen, get a really solid option to develop in the BYU standout. Packers at 25. I'm going Cooper DeJean. Just makes too much sense. You can play him outside a corner. You can move him back to safety. You can play him in the slot. You got a lot of different options with Cooper DeJean. I think he ends up being a first-round pick for sure. Injury might push him down the board a little bit. Packers capitalize and take the teammate of first-round pick last year, Lucas Van Ness. At number 26, I'm going to have the Bucs going with Leatu Latu, pass rusher from UCLA. Again, as I've said the entire process, he's the most technically skilled pass rusher in this class. Excellent hand usage. He is a master as far as what you're going to see from a college pass rusher. Really refined and advanced. Why is he pushed down the board? Well, he's a good athlete, not an exceptional one like Dallas Turner is. But of course, yes, as I've said a billion times, sorry to repeat it if you've heard it a billion times, but there are always new people coming here. He had to medically retire from football. The medicals on him, and that a lot of what the combine is used for, interviews, medical testing. That's number 1 and 2 in any order you want. The athletic testing, third, for sure. Medical and interview, way more important, I would say, for the NFL combine, because you know what you're looking at on tape. You know how fast a guy is. You can see their functional strength. But if Leatu Latu's cleared medically, completely, he could certainly be drafted higher than this. Cardinals at 27. Gonna go Jerzon Newton from Illinois. They could certainly use an upgrade on the interior of their defensive line as well as on the edge. You got a lot of different things you can do if you're Arizona. Corner, certainly a need as well. Cardinals, of course, take maybe the best overall player in the draft in Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 4. Double down with maybe the best interior defensive lineman in this class. Also a little bit undersized. Similar height, maybe 6'1", could be even 6'2", compared to Byron Murphy, who's maybe 6'1", but under 300 pounds, but he plays with a ton of juice. So you got a twitched up interior defensive lineman that lives in the backfield. I like the sound of that. Cardinals get a good one at 27. At number 28, have the Buffalo Bills. I've been back and forth on this, but I think it just ends up being a receiver. And for me, I'm pushing up Adonai Mitchell from Texas. Hook him. He is a great player. The one thing I can really say when you watch him, just smooth. I mean, the fluidity of his movement. It seems like there's no wasted motion. Now, could be a little bit sharper in his routes at times, especially at the top of the stem. You're trying to create separation. But he can get down the field. He's a long strider, so he really gets on you in a hurry and has big time speed to win down the field. Big body, you're talking about 6'3", 6'4", 200 pounds, maybe 195, whatever. But he is certainly worth a first-round pick. Underutilized at Texas. Injury is a problem for him as well. Back-to-back seasons at Georgia were ended or maybe even delayed at the start in some cases. Came back for the college football playoff in both of those cases for Georgia. Caught touchdowns. He's a machine, but injury has held him back at times. Was healthy at Texas. Hope he continues that on. And the Bills get a big jump ball receiver with speed down the field. Somebody that can actually catch is a fun weapon for Josh Allen. I'm excited about that possibility, that potential as an NFL fan. Lions at 29, I'm going Kool-Aid McKinstry. Their secondary is improving, but you got holes on the boundary. No question, Kool-Aid McKinstry could be a starter. Again, sooner rather than later, the way we said for some of these players. And then at number 30, I'm going to have the Ravens doing a bit of a reverse from what they did in 2018. What did they do in 2018? They traded up for a quarterback. I think it might have been the last pick of the first round. This time, they are trading down as another team moves up for a quarterback. And I have the Las Vegas Raiders moving up for Bo Nix. Now, we've seen trades like this happen in the past, and I'm kind of modeling this off of the Ravens trade up. It was 2 second-round picks total, plus a pick swap down the board. Something like, of course, the Ravens would need to be incentivized. So maybe 131 up to 113, or maybe even more likely 164 up to 147. Something like this. The Raiders absolutely do need a quarterback, and Bo Nix has potential as well. He's got a good arm, he's got good mobility, and he apparently has the mental makeup that teams get really, really excited about. So would you take Bo Nix top 10? I don't think you would. Would you take him top 15? Maybe that starts to creep into the conversation. It is a quarterback. QBs get pushed up the board, but I think you could feel okay about him at 30. Now, you do have to move picks to get him, and why do you do that? Well, one, you stop another team from taking him, and two, you get that fifth-year option. So this is now a very cheap option for 5 years, and if he becomes the player that you want him to be, that's incredibly cheap. Now, how long does a quarterback really take to develop if they're a starter? Maybe 3, maybe 4 years. You kind of know what you have. And then in that 5th year, you might have them in their absolute prime, and you're not paying them like it. So it's incredibly good value. Bo Nix, I mean, he's good. He's pretty accurate and has good mobility and does have some pretty good arm talent overall. You're talking about accuracy plus arm strength. Bo Nix has a pretty good arm. He's not the player he was at Auburn. If you get Oregon Bo Nix, who continues to develop, you're getting a pretty good quarterback. At number 31, have the 49ers going with Graham Barton, an offensive lineman from Duke. He's probably going to move inside, guard or center even. Did play center at Duke for some time. Maybe you could even stick him at tackle. Shorter arms could be a bit of a concern, but he's expected to move inside, probably to center. 49ers, they could use upgrades all over the offensive line, really. It's take your pick whether you want him to play guard, center, or even maybe right tackle, or left tackle long-term after Trent Williams is gone, but he's still under contract for a while. Have to see if he ends up retiring before that or get that money. He's still at the top of his game. Why retire? Unless injuries are mounting up, but he's been pretty healthy lately. At number 32, have the Kansas City Chiefs going with Keon Coleman. continues to be one of my favorite marriages in this draft process. If Coleman's available at 32, I keep pushing him down the board. He's a solid athlete. I need to see him advance as a route runner, but he's a big body. It's going to be tough. He's 6'4", 215 pounds. Does have good movement skills, but is not close to an elite route runner right now, but will make the biggest splash plays of anybody in this class with the football in the air. If you need a jump ball target, look no further than Keon Coleman. He is exceptional with the football in the air. It makes some of the most unbelievable catches you'll ever see. At number 33, first pick of the second round, we're finally here. Thought about this one for a while, and people have always asked, what would you do for the Panthers? Offensive line or receiver for me. That's what I think. And for Bryce Young, you need to give him help up front, but you also need somebody that can separate. And when thinking about that, I ended up prioritizing wide receiver. Now, who can really, really separate from this bunch? Who are the elite separators? Ladd McConkey, Xavier Worthy probably, right? And I know Troy Franklin is good. I comped him to Will Fuller on Twitter. He's a big-time deep threat, right? He's not an elite route runner at this point. Somebody that is pushing towards that, Ladd McConkey and Xavier Worthy. Worthy's got better deep speed than McConkey. McConkey's probably a little bit better underneath, but does have good speed down the field as well. In the end, I'm going Xavier Worthy. You can call it Texas bias. I just think this is a distinct possibility. Looking at what the Panthers could really use at receiver, somebody with elite speed that can separate underneath even, and also is dynamic after the catch, maybe even gives you a return option as well. I think he could get pushed up the board a little bit here. Ends up going at number 33 overall. It's a stacked receiver class. Who's to say that the Panthers absolutely have Troy Franklin above Xavier Worthy? Roman Wilson could be picked here. Ladd McConkey, as I mentioned. Maybe it's even Tez Walker or Xavier Legette. You got options, but for me, I'm going Xavier Worthy. I just think he fits exactly what the Panthers should be looking for at receiver. Should be a good combination with Jonathan Mingo. Very different type of player. At number 34, got the Patriots not going wide receiver. I'm going offensive line, and it's Jordan Morgan. Could potentially stick a tackle, could move inside to guard. Might just have a better body for that. And for the Patriots, well, Mike Onwenu is somebody that you want to bring back long-term probably, but there are another of other concerns with expiring contracts. Point being, Trent Brown. Point being, though, you could definitely look to take an offensive lineman here at 34. And Morgan is a first-round type of player. If he falls to 34, I think you'd probably consider taking him there. I know somebody's comped him to Matthew Bergeron, tackle at Syracuse last year that ended up being drafted as a guard, taken 34, 36, something like that to the Falcons. Jordan Morgan, probably in that same conversation, but could potentially stick at tackle for sure. Cardinals at 35. Going Chop Robinson here. Chop Robinson is a freak athlete. One of the best in the draft off the edge, if not the best. He can go from 0 to 60 in a split second. Big time speed. Hand usage is not advanced. He's got a good couple of moves that he goes to off the rip. That's kind of funny. No pun intended. But his swipe move probably is best. Needs to develop as a true rush player with counter moves. He just really doesn't have a go-to if the first thing doesn't work. And he's got electric big-time speed. But I don't think he's that raw because he does show off some moves, just needs to really develop into what's the second if the first doesn't work. And again, as explosive as they come off the edge, really decent run defender as well. And I think, again, he's a first-round type of player that falls into the second round. Cardinals really bolstering the defense here after the pick of Marvin Harrison Jr. with an interior defensive guy and then an edge rusher with, again, big-time twitch. At number 36, have the Commanders. So I think this is Zach Frazier. Their offensive line needs to be improved. Right now, their starting center is Nick Gates on their depth chart, which isn't phenomenal, former Giant. Zach Frazier is a day one plug-and-play starting center. You know, the Giants took John Michael Schmitz last year in the second round. Zach Frazier, I think he's in that same type of realm as a prospect. And Frazier is a mauler with a wrestling background. Love that from an interior offensive lineman, any offensive lineman in general, right? And the Commanders need to bolster their offensive line. And you draft Drake May, get him some help up front. Zach Frazier ends up being the pick. At number 37, have the Chargers going with Troy Franklin. Could have considered wide receiver at number 5. You trade down, get Brock Bowers. Now you take a receiver at 37. Big time speed down the field. And you're really building a team that's going to be tough for anybody to cover because it's electric speed. Even Quentin Johnston does have pretty good speed. Brock Bowers has exceptional speed for his size. Troy Franklin would be the fastest player on this team probably. And for the Chargers, get more help for Justin Herbert. You don't have to take a receiver at 5 necessarily, although they might. Keenan Allen might not be back in 2025. Joshua Palmer might not be back in 2025. Mike Williams might not be back in 2025. You need an answer beyond those guys. Johnston had an up and down rookie year. He had a down rookie year. Troy Franklin offers you a different option there at 37. At number 38, have the Titans going with Ladd McConkey. Great separator. I think he does end up being a top 50 pick pretty comfortably. See if he ends up going this high, maybe even into the first round. He can get open. He's got good hands, and he can run by you as well. I know he's a white guy, so he's a sneaky speed, but he's got an extra gear, and he's so good as a route runner with head fakes and just different subtleties to the route running game that allow him to create separation and space. But he can also run by you, which typically you'd be kind of surprised about because he's a cracker, right? But at number 39, and the Titans really could use somebody that can separate, by the way. Traylon Burks, got my questions about that. And McConkey's, he can be an outside guy. He's not just a slot guy because he's, a white. But 6', 185, good route running, typical Z-type receiver. At number 39, have my team, the New York Giants. Thought about this for a while. And I end up settling on somebody that's fallen a little bit down the board based on where I kind of expect them to be. Back into the first round, into the second. I'm going with Darius Robinson from Mizzou. Dominated the Senior Bowl. He is what I would typically refer to as a 3-4 versatile defensive end because this is a guy, and depending on his weight, I've seen him at 290, I've seen him at 275, listed here at 6'5", 296. He is somebody that in the Giants defense, I'm thinking because former Tennessee defensive coordinator Shane Bowen comes to the Giants. What do they like to do? Well, Robinson is somebody that is not a great comparison, but think about Danico Autry. No, Danico Autry is going to be far from a household name, but 6'5", roughly 290, someone that has played on the, and he had 11.5 sacks last year, goodness, but someone that can play on the outside, can play on the inside, and give you a bunch of different versatile looks, whether he's playing at the 5 tech or wider than that. Maybe if it's 3rd and long, even slide him inside to be a 3 technique type player. And someone that can move all over, that can hold up against the run on rush downs off the edge and then slide inside as a pass rusher on passing downs, that offers a ton of value to a defense. I think Darius Robinson would be a big-time addition. The Giants are missing something off the edge. Azeez Ojulari cannot be counted on. Kayvon Thibodeau, you hope, continues to develop. But Robinson's a really nice addition to that defense. At number 40, I'm doing something that I don't want to have to do. I'm a big Texas fan and a big Giants fan, of course. A lot of family made sure I was a Texas fan from an early age, in case you were curious, as people always are. I have to give the Commanders, a division rival of my favorite NFL team, one of my favorite players in college football, that's Ja'Tavion Sanders. They could use an upgraded tight end. Logan Thomas is aging, and getting another guy in the mix would be a very good idea. Sanders has electric speed for a tight end and very, very good hands. Developing as a blocker and a route runner, but electric speed, something special happens when Sanders gets the football in his hands. You just don't typically see a big man move the way he does down the field. 6'4", 245 pounds. Can really go up and get the football, doesn't drop it. Really never drops the ball. Commanders get a really good one there at number 40. And I really could see Ja'Tavion Sanders go even higher than this. The end of the first round into the second is going to be very, very interesting. At number 41, Green Bay Packers on the clock. No secret that they need to improve their secondary. brought in the Boston College guy to be their new DC. And, of course, a guy like Tyler Nubin is going to fit in very well. Now, it is a press-focused defense now, I'm pretty certain, with the corners. So their mindset could change, and maybe a guy like Ennis Rakestraw makes a ton of sense here. Because maybe, in that case, Cooper DeJean moves to safety. You get a big press corner on the outside. But I'm liking the addition of Nubin anyway. You get a big-time ball-hawking safety that can come in and be a playmaker on the back end. I love the fit for Green Bay. You know who I also love? Well, Rakestraw, Tampa could be really good fits for that system. I look down the board here, and I see Jaden Hicks from Washington State. I need to find a way to get him in. I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think I got him into the second round here. I think he ends up being a second-round pick. I just couldn't make it work. He could be the first safety off the board, but I do think it ends up being Tyler Nubin. But fun pick for Green Bay, nonetheless. Vikings at 42. Well, you traded up for a QB. You still have a second-round pick. I think you take what you may have drafted at 12 if you didn't move up, or 11, wherever they were. I think they were at 11, right? So they need help on the edge desperately, because you may be losing all of your pass rushers. That's just a legitimate possibility. So I'm going with Braylon Trice from UW. Really, really solid pass rusher as well. His pass rush win rate, some of the highest, I think actually the highest in college football over the past couple of seasons. And maybe not the craziest athlete, but somebody I think is going to be a pretty good pro. At number 42, I think you're pretty excited about landing a starter in the second round. At number 43, I'm not going to have the Atlanta Falcons pick here because I'm going to have them making a big-time trade for Justin Fields. Yep, that's what's happening. It's an interesting thing, but I think you're pretty happy about moving, a second-round pick to get Justin Fields to be a starting quarterback there. Now, is it your dream QB? No, but he's someone who has as much potential as a lot of these quarterbacks, and he's still very young, not in a great situation in Chicago. Now you're going to load him up with offensive playmakers. Kyle Pitts, Roma Dunze in this scenario, Bijan Robinson, Drake London, an improving offensive line. You trade number 43 to get your new starting quarterback. I think you feel pretty good about that. So Justin Fields to the Falcons in this mock draft. I know it's an interesting one. I think it's a possibility. I don't know that Fields fetches a first-round pick the way that's been reported from some people. It could be a package of picks. I'm making it easy today. I'm just doing it straight up for a second, which I think is a possibility. And I have the Bears taking Roman Wilson as a result. Could not get Roma Dunze to fall to you. Well, you get big-time speed here at number 43 after the Justin Fields trade. Only about 5'10", maybe. Listed at 6 foot here. I don't think that's true. Yeah, I've seen his measurements around 5'10". Maybe even close to 5'11", right? This is 5'10". Yeah, Senior Bowl has him at 5'10". He's not 6 foot. I don't give a shit if he lies on his Tinder profile pic to push up to 6 foot. He can play football. He's got electric speed down the field. Everything is fast. Now, could improve just pacing with his routes, but has electric speed, can win down the field, can get the football and go. And I think that's a really fun combination with new Bears starting quarterback Caleb Williams. Of course, have DJ Moore. I think Roman Wilson's a fun combo. Could move him to the slot and have a lot of fun. At number 44, Ravens' first pick of this draft after a trade down. And I'm going with an offensive tackle, Patrick Paul from U of H. Patrick Paul, a lot of size here. It's a trend of the offensive tackles in this class. 6'7", maybe even more than 315 pounds. And he is somebody that would compete to start at tackle sooner rather than later, as I continue to say. However, the Ravens don't necessarily need him right now. Just Ronnie Stanley is unreliable. Morgan Moses is not under contract long term. What happens beyond that? They don't have much. Patrick Paul could be an eventual starter. Saints at 45. Going with the big man from Texas, T'Vondre Sweat. If I could scroll to him. How far is he down the board for PFF? Brutal. Going with T'Vondre, number 90. Well, I disagree with that. Horns up. T'Vondre Sweat, if you're unfamiliar, because I haven't pushed him into the first round of a lot of my mock drafts. Some of them, sure. But I don't know that he's a first-round guy. But I love him as a player. He is your I wouldn't even say traditional nose tackle, but he is your zero technique, which is a nose tackle, but there's nothing traditional about 6'4", 362 pounds. Devondre Sweat is a mountain of a man, and when he wants to, you are not moving him. As a run defender, oh my goodness, he is the best in the class. As a pass rusher, surprisingly good for somebody of his size, but that's not really his game. He is someone that takes up space and does not let you move the line of scrimmage. He can take double teams, no problem. Anyway, as a combo, the combo blocks he can take on, double team maybe. I want to use different phrasing next time. Anyway, as a combination with Brian Brzee, I think that's a ton of fun. Sweat eats up the blocks. Brzee gets more one-on-ones, and your edge rushers, I think you're wanting a little bit more from them. Maybe you continue to try to develop Peyton Turner and Isaiah Foskey. Cam Jordan obviously has been a mainstay there for a long time. But how do you make their jobs easier? Just take up the entire interior offensive line with Brzee and Sweat and create one-on-ones on the outside. Devondre Sweat, I think, is a really fun fit down in New Orleans. At number 46, I have the Colts going with Western Kentucky receiver Malachi Corley. He is, as I mentioned earlier, maybe the best run-after-catch player in the draft. Western Kentucky pretty much only used him for screens. I mean, his depth of target is non-existent. However, he does have big-time speed. So yes, you see it as a run-after-catch guy, but he can get down the field, even if he wasn't asked to very often at least 2 years ago. And he's nicknamed the Yak King for a reason. His yards after contact and yards after catch is out of control. So good, but also from guys that I've talked to, they also don't really see any stiffness to him that would inhibit him from being a good route runner long-term. So as he expands his route tree, you might have a super dynamic player in the future. And I like the combination. If you can bring back Michael Pittman, bring in Malachi Corley, you have Josh Downs, and then Alec Pierce as a deep threat. That's a pretty good, quartet of receivers. Didn't think I'd be using that word today. Number 47, I have the New York Giants. Very easy to go offensive line here. I'm going Christian Haynes from UConn. One of the better interior offensive linemen in this class. He's right up there. You talk about the interior offensive linemen. It's Christian Mahogany, Cooper Beebe, Christian Haynes as your guards. And then, of course, the tackles we talked about earlier moving to guard. And then, of course, the centers, JPJ and Zach Frazier. Haynes is one of the best pure guards in the draft. I saw Christian Mahogany get comped to Cyrus Torrance today. Just a big-bodied people mover, mauler in the run game. But Haynes, a little more finesse to his game, but starting guard potential right away. Good pass protector on the interior, and the Giants desperately need that. At number 48, I have the Jacksonville Jaguars going with, we just talked about, Cooper Beebe from Kansas State. Another mauler, like we talked about with the Osiris Torrance clone. 6'4", 335. He is, I guess, similar to Mahogany, but Beebe is just bigger and better, I would say. Has good movement skills out on the perimeter as well when he gets out in space if he's pulling. Jags could use an upgrade on the interior big time. Beebe ends up being a good fit. At number 49, have the Bengals going with receiver Jalen Polk from Washington. One of my favorite players in this draft. He was able to, and this is not a dig at Michael Penix, but he was able to make Michael Penix look like a stud at times. And that's not to say that he wasn't a great college quarterback, because he was. Jalen Polk, though, could make anything remotely catchable a catch. I mean, as good as it comes for catches in traffic and going up and grabbing the balls outside your frame, his catch radius is ridiculous. He doesn't drop the ball. He is insane. Love Jalen Polk as a player. Is he ever going to be an elite separator? I don't know. Is he ever going to burn by you? Not sure. But if you throw him the football, I think he's going to come down with it a lot more often than not. Jalen Polk to the Bengals, I think, is a great fit. You're bringing back Jamar Chase long-term. He's under contract. That's fine. Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins could walk in free agency. Maybe you franchise tag Higgins. Maybe you come to an agreement. But either way, it's important to add another receiver. so that no disrespect here, but so that Trenton Irwin doesn't have to play as much as he does. Jalen Polk at 49. I love the fit. At number 50, we're going Edgerrin Cooper. And it's honestly, it's late for him. When you have everybody wanting Edgerrin Cooper in the second round, you see mock drafts of, oh, the Packers will take Edgerrin Cooper at 41. No, the Giants will get him at 39. No, but the Commanders could use him at 40, but so could the Vikings at 42. Well, surely, the Saints would take him at 45 if he gets there. Oh, but that's the Colts' Shaq Leonard replacement at 46. Everyone wants Edgerrin Cooper. Explosive athlete with great size. 6'3", 230. Can maybe play off the edge at times as well. Can cover for sure. The Eagles typically don't draft linebackers very high. I think at 50, with a player like Edgerrin Cooper falling, you would. He is someone that could certainly get up into the first round. He fell here for me here. First linebacker off the boards at 50. Still have not seen a running back. That will change. At number 51, have the LA Rams, who went off the edge at number 19. That's a win now move. Now going with a win for the future move. I'm going with Michael Penix Jr. out of UW. He can drive the football as well as anybody in this draft, pretty much. He lives on the outside of the field. That's whole shots. That's just driving it deep. And when you have Rome Odunze, and of course, we talked about Jalen Polk, Jalen McMillan earlier as well, you can do that. Didn't really throw over the middle of the field a ton, but I think with Sean McVay, you can refine him as an overall player. The arm talent is really good, and I think if anyone can get the most out of him, it would be Sean McVay. So he sits for a year behind Stafford, gets refined as a passer, and then you have your answer after him you're looking for in Michael Penix Jr. So Rams end up taking a QB at 51. You don't get the fifth-year option, but you also don't have to take him at 19 or trade up into the first round to get him. At number 52, tough to find a better fit as well in this draft. I'm going Ennis Rakestraw out of Mizzou. First-round talent. I pushed him down the board a bit. Injuries could hold him back. Has had a couple of big-time injuries and surgeries over the past couple of years that might make him available at this point. But big physical press man corner, 6 foot 188 with physicality off the charts. The Steelers' brand of football, especially with their corners, is physicality. Someone that can play press man coverage is highly valuable to the Steelers, and they take one there at 52 in Ennis Rakestraw Jr. out of Mizzou. And I love the other Mizzou corner. I hyped him up on Twitter. Chris Abrams-Drain, very different type of player. He's 5'11", 178, and plays like it, where Rakestraw plays to about 6'1", 205 pounds and still moves really well. Abrams-Drain, I'm not working into the second round. I like him in the third or the fourth maybe. Really, really like him as a player, but I think Rakestraw ends up going earlier. Very different type. I would say if you're looking for more ball skills, you'd go Chris Abrams-Drain. If you're looking for someone to play off coverage, you go Chris Abrams-Drain. If you want that press guy, it's Ennis Rakestraw for sure. Dolphins at 53. I'm going Kieran Amagaji from Yale. He is a developmental player, and now that you've improved the interior of the offensive line at 21 with JPJ, you can afford to take a tackle to sit for a year and then end up being a starter maybe beyond Teron Armstead, or even play him at right tackle potentially as well. Amagaji has NFL size. He's 6'5", 318, but he played at Yale. Now, I think I saw Jeff Schwartz, former NFL offensive lineman, tweet this out, is that you look for him to dominate physically more often than he did against competition that Yale would face, Ivy League competition. He didn't exactly do that, but he has the size that says he can. And if you give him a year where he doesn't have to start and he develops, you might end up having a really solid starting offensive lineman at 53 there. At 54, I've got the Eagles going back to the Georgia well. It's cornerback Kamari Lassiter, starting potential. And everyone, I don't know why I'm getting into fights about this. The Eagles cornerback group is not good. Darius Slay's a heck of a player. He's older. James Bradbury has lost a step. Beyond that, Kelee Ringo is not as good as Kamari Lassiter. Stop telling me Eli Ricks. Stop telling me that. He is not going to start over a guy like Kamari Lassiter or any of these corners they could have taken in the first round. Lassiter is better. I can't, what are we doing that we're hyping up Eli Ricks in 2024 like this? Maybe he ends up being a stud, And he has been at times in college football, but he's just not that explosive of an athlete. He's buried on the depth chart. Don't tell me Zech McPherson. Lassiter offers you starting potential. You take a corner at this point in the draft. You absolutely would. At number 55, given the Browns, Tez Walker from UNC by way of Kent State. Welcome back to Ohio. You're now a starting caliber receiver. He can separate. He can win down the field. The hands really weren't a problem on tape, but they were at the Senior Bowl. That concerns me. Not refined as a route runner yet, but could be, maybe. And he's got great athleticism. The Browns could use help at receiver, especially with, something more long-term. Number 56, it's the first running back off the board. It's University of Texas running back. Hook 'em, Jonathan Brooks. Man, does it seem like I have Texas bias, but let's think about it. Byron Murphy, maybe interior defensive lineman 1 in this draft. Up in that conversation with Newton, right? Tavion Sanders, tight end 2. Someone was trying to tell me Cade Stover the other day. Stop. Hey, I like Cade Stover. He's not as good as Tavion Sanders and doesn't nearly have the ceiling. So that's your second best tight end in the draft. Where does he go? Andre Sweat, in the conversation to be one of the first 3 or 4 interior defensive linemen off the board. I missed Adonai Mitchell, probably one of the best 5 or 6 receivers in this class. That's where he goes. It's just Texas has some of the best players in the draft this year at their positions. Jonathan Brooks maybe is RB1. Or his ACL. That's tough. Could push him down the board. But the Cowboys, and I don't love this as a Giants fan, right? Cowboys get to keep him in state and get maybe the best overall running back in this class. The combination of speed, contact balance, vision, and the uncanny ability to make second and third level defenders miss, especially safeties in that third level. Unbelievable. He is a starting caliber running back, and it would be a nice 1-2 punch with Tony Pollard. And Pollard might not even be there long term. Maybe the future is Jonathan Brooks and Rico Dowdle. That's not a bad 1-2. It really isn't. Jonathan Brooks may end up going later than this, but I don't really see a lot of running backs getting into the second round. I could see a few, but I don't know if any of them are top 50 picks. Teams always need running backs, though, so we'll see. At number 57, have the Green Bay Packers going with Junior Colson from Michigan. I want to get these linebackers up the board. I'm going to figure out a way to do it. Colson, I think, is really good. Big time speed, thumper downhill, but I also think his movement ability in space is pretty good. So I see a really fun linebacker for the Packers to add into the mix with a ton of athleticism. And I think they maybe would have considered Edgerrin Cooper at 41, end up deciding to go for a safety, and they end up getting a linebacker that is up there in the LB1 conversation at 57. Again, I think that's pretty good value. I think Colson and Cooper end up going earlier. It's just tough to fit everything in because I think all of these guys are pretty much going to go earlier, but then you have positional need factored in. It's tough. At number 58, I apologize in advance. I have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting DJ Tampa. Need I say more? I'm going to. It's not about the last name. They need help in the secondary. DJ Tampa can really help you do that. He's an excellent press man corner that can actually play pretty well in zone as well. His read and react is pretty good. 6'2", 200, but again, exceptional press man corner. Could end up seeing him going a lot higher than this to a team like the Steelers, like, maybe the Packers now, maybe the Giants, right? Got potential for that. But at the Bucks, I do like the last name. It's a second round mock draft. It's fun to get that in. But, we take edge at 26. Still need help in the secondary. DJ Tampa at 58. Texans at 59. I'm going with Peyton Wilson from NC State. And no, I'm not. I'm going Chris Braswell. I missed it. I saw the Bills pick, so that's spoiled. But Chris Braswell, teammates with Will Anderson Jr. at Alabama. Braswell stepped into the Will Anderson Jr. role and really exploded onto the scene. So maybe you would consider somebody else because maybe you're taking the same position here. We'll say weak side versus strong side linebacker. Maybe you'd take somebody more like, I don't know about Adisa Isaac, but potentially, but more like Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan at 6'3", 275. But Braswell is explosive off the edge. Maybe he's a designated pass rusher right away. And, Steve Spagnuolo was big on the NASCAR package back in the day. You throw out all your edge rushers on the field pretty much. Matthias Kiwanuka, Osu Manura, Justin Tuck, Michael Strahan. I think all were on that '07 team, right? And it was tough for an offensive line to defend against that. If you bring out so much speed on the field, it's a problem. Maybe you bring back Jonathan Grenard, maybe you don't. But on, clear passing downs, Will Anderson Jr. on one side, Chris Braswell on the other, that's a tough combo to stop. And then at number 60, I'm going Peyton Wilson from NC State. Peyton Wilson is definitely better than a top 50 player in this class. 6'4", 240 with amazing speed. His tape looks like a first-round player. No question. Why does he go down here? Very, very, very many injuries. So many. So medical is going to be absolutely imperative for him to go higher than this. It's going to be super important for him to be medically cleared all the way. But teams still might weigh that, and they certainly are going to. And I think that could push him down the board. He is so good. And I think when the Bills are looking at Jack Campbell last year, maybe I heard there were linked to him. Obviously didn't end up even getting to them, didn't end up working out. But Wilson has some of the things that you like about a Jack Campbell. Size, speed, and the Bills really need help at linebacker. Terrell Bernard loves to miss tackles. This is like a more traditional linebacker with linebacker size at 6'4", 240. He's a little bit older as well. But number 61, got the Lions going with Chris Jenkins, going back to the Michigan well. And we went corner at number 29. Now we're going interior defensive line with Chris Jenkins. Aiden Hutchinson worked out pretty well out of Michigan. Not going Chris Jenkins for that same reason. But of course, the bloodlines are great. Son of, you guys might remember Chris Jenkins? Well, this is his son, Chris Jenkins. Very different builds. Chris Jenkins was like 360. But this Chris Jenkins is 6'3", 305, got a little bit more juice. And the Lions could use that on the interior. I like their defensive line, but you could use a bit more of a pass rush. Chris Jenkins, I think, is what you're hoping for. I think he ends up bringing that, if things work out for sure. Because the step Aleem McNeil took cannot be overlooked. I like Benito Jones, but he's not a big-time pass rusher the way that a Chris Jenkins could be. At number 62, I've got the Baltimore Ravens going with Marshawn Nealon from Western Michigan. You could use help on the edge, and getting, a big-bodied defensive end like this that can rush the passer but also set the edge, motor that never stops, could even end up going a lot higher than this. I know a lot of people love Marshawn Nealon. At number 63, I like Jaden Hicks here. I really do. I'm going to end up going Mike Sainristil from Michigan as well. Michigan players flying off the board here at the end of the second round. Sainristil is a plug-and-play starting slot corner. Now, the 49ers could use help all over the secondary, but when you're looking at the boundary options at this point, not sure Kyrie Jackson ends up going this early. It's a possibility for sure. And then Jerry and Jones, is it a little early for him? Cam Hart, a little early for those guys? Certainly could be. Chris Abrams-Drain probably ends up being a slot corner. Andrew Phillips, great player. I wanted so badly to get him into the second round. Probably ends up being a slot corner as well. So it's tough to say if they try to go for a boundary guy at this point. Kalen King may be boundary. Kalen Carson may be boundary. But King could also end up playing the slot. Had a rough year this year. Didn't look very good at the Senior Bowl either. But Sainristil is just a really good player to add to the secondary. I figure the 49ers can figure it out. But he's probably a starting slot corner right away. I love the Mike Hilton comp that's been thrown out there for him. Hilton's such a great player. Sainristil, cut from a similar cloth. And then at number 64, going back to interior defensive line, I'm going to give the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs, Rook Orororo from Clemson. I know it sounds like I'm doing a Scooby-Doo impression. Sounds like a ridiculous name. He is a very good player. Not a stat sheet stuffer at this point, but size, speed, athleticism, still developing, but this is prototypical 3-tech size at 6'4", 295. Will offer you a pass rush on the interior, can convert speed to power, and that could be, that can be a dominant force on the inside. And if you can bring back Chris Jones, this is a really good running mate with him. If you can't, now you got a replacement. That's a 2-round mock draft, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.